Compelled by Schlock.
Well, how about some authentic Bulgarian schlock? Bet you didn't think I could find some this time of year, but I'm a little too resourceful for you. What is up, everybody? I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous, and joining us is a very special guest, Lance the Obscure Movie Guy, all the way from the Lance the Obscure Movie Guy YouTube channel and podcast. We are talking about the 1991 underrated, I believe it's underrated, Halloween classic, Ernest Scared Stupid. What is up, everybody? Lance, so excited to have you back. We are having some technical difficulties because we're figuring out all this new stuff. So I just got to warn everybody that Lance might cut in and out. Chris and I might cut in and out. We're all going to try and be very polite so that the microphones can pick us up and we can do our thing. So Lance, how's your Schlocktober going?
Not as well as I would like it to. I was hoping to have more stuff posted this far into the month, but slow process. I've got a real life job that's been kicking my butt here lately, so
yeah, man, that happens.
Not enough time to do any of this fun stuff.
Well, you just recently posted a new video that everyone should go check out. I don't remember the title of it, but it's you've kind of found some old DVDs and you're going through your collection. It's pretty fun video.
Yes. Trying to clear out the garage to make some room for more projects. That's just one of like 5 boxes of DVDs I have stuffed back there. I do have a lot of mainstream movies, but as you can see through the first video, there's some weird ones in there that most people probably wouldn't even bother watching, let alone buying from a video store. So
that's awesome. I have a question for you, Lance. Did you, between like 08 and 012, when all the video stores were going out, did you like purchase lots of really obscure schlock movies at a discounted price?
Oh yeah. Hollywood Video, like I said in the video, would do like a 5 for 20 or a 4 for 20 type deal. And I would probably go there like every other week when I would get paid and just pick up some random movies.
Yeah.
So that was when it was like going out of business.
Yep. Same.
Yeah. Picking up cheap movies, cheap DVDs was always the best. I love going through the Walmart $5 bin. That's what your video reminded me of. It's like just going through the $5 bin.
Yeah.
What's sad now is like the $5 bin at Walmart is like normal mainstream movies. Like people just don't buy DVDs anymore. And then Best Buy announced the other day that they're not going to sell physical copies of video games and DVDs next year. So it's like it's all going to be obscure if you even have a DVD.
Man, that is crazy. I got a lot of thoughts on that we should talk about sometime, but we got to talk about Ernest Scared Stupid. This movie, it cost $9.6 million to create, which I think is a good modest budget. I think it would probably cost more to make today with just general inflation. But I think it's a modest budget. It's sure not a $200 million by any stretch. It only made back a little over $14 million, which I think is a good haul, but it wasn't enough for Disney to keep their contract going to make another Ernest movie. So they got rid of the rights for it, and they only made one other Ernest movie, Ernest Rides Again. Do you guys remember? No. They created that. That was the last one to go to theaters, and then everything else after that was a straight to video release, but this is supposed to be the most popular Ernest movie, is what I'm reading.
Okay.
And I have something very disappointing to tell you in my little tidbits. I just found this out, I think yesterday morning. I was reading up on this movie. I regret to inform you guys and everyone watching or listening, miak is not real. There's no such substance as miak. And
There should be.
I thought, since I was a kid, I thought it was I thought it was like hair. Authentic Bulgarian hair.
Like weird Bulgarian like sauce or like a milk substitute. It was
Yeah, like so
when it comes to schlock, I'm sure.
There are people that have looked into this and they've tried to figure out what it is or what it could be, and they decided it's like well, obviously it's a mix between the words milk and yak, and they've decided that it's some sort of, I think, like spiced yogurt topping that you put on pancakes in spring. That's why it's out of season.
That's oddly specific.
And yet I crave it.
Gotta have some. So anyway, I'm sorry if that ruined your childhood. It certainly ruined mine. And I also got to add spoilers. I spoiled your childhood. We're going to spoil this movie. We're going to spoil maybe all the Ernest movies and anything we've ever laid eyes on. So, I see the Scared Shirtless podcast is in the chat. That's our buddy S. Michael Sims. He's we can do this fancy thing now where we can show comments. Jim Varney was a childhood hero of mine and a national treasure. Thank you for covering. Hey man, definitely. I love Jim Varney. I was going to wait till the end of the video to discuss this, but this feels like intro stuff. He is, when we were watching this, we were talking about how he is kind of like a really slapstick, funny Mr. Rogers. There's always like kind of a good lesson in it. There's definitely some good lessons in this movie. And whenever, you see those memes, it says like the Trinity of wholesomeness, and it has like Mr. Rogers and what's his name? LeVar Burton. I was going to say Geordie LaForge and like Bob Ross and like just wholesomeness, right? I feel like Jim Varney needs to be in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue.
He is by far probably one of the most underrated actors in cinema history, in my opinion, because God bless him for sticking with Ernest for so long, kind of like Paul Rubens and Pee-wee. Like he's able to play that character on and off like a light switch, and he did it for, a decade plus before he got ill. But he was also really good at the other things that people never saw him do. And he was really good theatrically, really good at a lot of the other stuff that, even though they were minor parts. And he never got enough credit because nobody ever wanted to see beyond what Ernest was. And I don't think that was fair to Varney.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Jim Varney a little bit. The way we do this show, see, I'm segueing here. The way we do this show is we talk about the good, the bad, and the schlock, what we like, what we didn't like, and just sort of our overall impressions or big ideas or things that we've noticed in these movies. But where we like to start first is with the web of schlock. We want to see where these people came from and where they're going. So, Chris, tell us about the people who made this movie, and let's do some Jim Varney talk.
Yeah, we're gonna start backstage with a couple people, then move forward and end with Mr. Varney, so we can kind of just really talk about him a lot. John R. Cherry III is the director and one of the writers, and he has a lot of directing credits, and almost all of them are Ernest movies. They really felt like a team. There was a lot of people involved in a lot of Ernest movies, and they just kind of carried over from one to the other. You see lots of actors playing characters that they invented in one movie, 4 movies later. It really felt like their own little studio system, and whether they were independent or with Touchstone Disney or some other place. And then the other thing specifically to this movie is the special effects. I was watching the end and I'm like, man, why do these trolls look so familiar? And it's the Giallo brothers who did the special effects for Critters and a movie that you love that we reviewed here, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. In fact, some of these trolls are repurposed clowns from that movie. And I was wondering how they could afford such great effects and so many trolls on such a small budget. And that was it. But
reuse them.
Yeah. And well, and like the pizza that they were throwing, that was reused from Secret of the Ooze, Turtles 2. Like they just, whatever they could get their hands on, they were using. But, you know, props to those guys. We've talked about them before, but they made this movie extra special. And then, you know, moving in front of the camera, there are lots of actors who just had little recurring characters in this. But Eartha Kitt, man, she is amazing. And she's probably, she was Yzma in Emperor's New Groove. She was in Holes, Boomerang. She's just been in so many things. What a great actress who had a really long, cool career, unique voice, unique mannerisms, how she like her delivery, everything was like really, really special and cool.
Has she played that character more than just this movie and Yzma? I mean, it's a very similar kind of witchy character, right?
Yeah, and in Holes, she's kind of that way too.
It's kind of like what's that gal in The Incredibles who designs their clothing?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like the cartoon is made to like look exactly like that person.
Yep.
Like it totally reminded me of that.
Yep. And then we got Jim Varney, who you know, like Lance said, is not just Ernest. I mean, that's probably what we'll end up talking about, but he was in a lot of smaller dramatic roles. He was also Jed in the Beverly Hillbillies reboot, where he was awesome in that. And then just all the characters and all the Ernest things. I mean, how many different characters do you think he plays?
Oh, I mean, just so many. I saw an awesome meme where it shows all of his different characters, and it's like a D&D meme where it says the dungeon master has to play all the characters or whatever. Like, I mean, yeah, he just runs the entire scale of possible characters.
So yeah, I would love to open it up for your either of your guys' thoughts on Jim Varney and Ernest in general, and all the just you know, what was your favorite Ernest movie? What was the first one you saw, etc.?
Well, for me, my favorite is, in fact, my favorite Ernest movie is this movie. But I mean, the first one I saw was Ernest Goes to Jail, which would probably be like my second favorite of the conglomerate that is Ernest P. Worrell. I mean, those were both really good. And, you know, like I said earlier, man, I think his acting abilities really get overshadowed by the fact that he's always remembered for Ernest. Ernest was more of a kids, you know, targeted demographic. So, you know, it's funny when you bring up the amount of characters that he plays, because, you know, in all actuality, and I'll probably get blasted on Facebook for this, but, you know, you could really compare him to like Robin Williams. Like, he's able to flip in and out of characters and voices so quick, like a light switch. But he just never got I feel like he just never got the recognition that he really deserved for being able to do that. And I feel like if you could take Robin Williams out of like a movie, you could easily substitute Jim Varney in there and probably come up with the same product.
Have a Jim Varney genie?
Man,
I think it would work.
If there's something that AI was meant to do, it was that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Lance. I mean, absolutely, this is my favorite Jim Varney movie by far. Mostly, though, because I haven't seen his smaller dramatic stuff. I was talking before this. I would love to see him in some dramatic roles because I've never seen it. I think the only other movie I know of him in is playing Jed in Beverly Hillbillies, and I think you can tell by watching the man perform that he has acting chops. He has the ability to do other things. At least that's the impression that I get. So I mean, I would love to see him in a dramatic role. If those movies are available, we should definitely cover that sometime.
Yeah, we'll find one or two.
I think the first movie I saw of him was probably Ernest Goes to Camp. Is that the first Ernest movie?
That's the first one, but that's not the first one I saw. I think the first one I saw was either Jail or Ernest Saves Christmas.
Okay.
And I think Ernest Saves Christmas is my favorite, and then probably Scared Stupid.
Yeah. Scared Stupid is just my favorite because it has it's horror, right? That it has the stuff that I want or that I enjoy in movies, right? Gross trolls. We need more.
He lives on Nilbog Street.
All right. So are we ready to go into our good and bad?
Let's do it.
Lance, since you are our special guest and we're going to be super polite and not talk over you so your mic can actually pick you up, let's give you the good and the bad. Hit us up with what you think is good about this movie.
Well, I mean, overall, it's a great movie. I mean, you know, the storyline I enjoy because, one, you don't see a whole lot of anything cinema-wise as far as trolls is concerned. And I'm not talking about like the stupid troll movies with Justin Timberlake. I'm talking like proper like folklore troll stuff. You don't see a whole lot of, especially horror movies revolving around a troll, even though it can be kind of arbitrary. It's just a monster, but there's not a lot of troll folklore in cinema. So that's kind of cool. You know, the acting, Varney and Eartha Kitt, like their dynamic, when those two are on screen together, it's a weird dynamic because it's almost like they're trying to outdo one another, but it's like her mannerisms and her acting come off as completely unique and different than from what he does, but they're still trying to like over one another, you know, just to see who can get a little bit better reaction. And the chemistry between them was really good. You know, in the overall storyline, I like the fact that it's like a gateway drug, you know, it's like a gateway horror movie for kids. You know, like if you were going to introduce your kids to like a horror movie, you know, you could definitely, this would be like the go-to. And then from there you could kind of move up to like maybe like Gremlins or Critters or, you know, something a little bit more serious like Friday the 13th. So I think it's a good, you know, introduction into, you know, what kids can come to expect, because there are certain, you know, as a small child, there would definitely be some scenes that are pretty scary. And you got to give a shout out to the special effects department, you know, that for its time and its budget, I don't care if they were reused, recycled or what, those are some good looking special effects. Practical special effects go a long way with me, and the trolls look legit. And it's like the fact that the troll is like, it's kind of unique because it almost comes off as like a leprechaun type thing, but still distinctive enough that it is a troll, but like not like the big troll, like living under the bridge type thing. So there's a lot of good for this movie, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, man. I think basically you said everything that I have to say. I mean, the movie is just so charming. The special effects are so great. The boogers coming out of his nose. It is scary. And I read that people think that maybe that's one of the reasons it didn't do so well in theaters, is because it's supposed to be a kids movie, but it's pretty legitimately scary in some places. The idea of this monster coming for children, stealing their souls. And I think the way I kind of look at this movie is, I don't know if you've ever seen the original Troll movie. So before the infamous Troll 2, where they're like actually goblins and stuff. We'll cover all of this someday on the show. But the first Troll, this movie feels more like a spiritual successor to that movie, because in some ways it feels like this movie is a serious horror movie, a serious troll movie. You got to see the original Troll. Like it really feels like it would fit nicely into that world. But Ernest is in it, and it's Ernest reacting to that world, and it's hilarious, and it's super relatable. I mean, let's face it, if I had to face some sort of evil monster in the real world, I wish I would be like Ash Williams in The Evil Dead, but I'd probably wind up being more like Ernest. Just screaming and terrified, and maybe coming up with the right solution, but generally not.
It's funny you bring up Ash Williams, because I'm gonna be bringing him up a little bit later as well. There's a good comparison there.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, Chris, what do you have for good?
You guys nailed it. I don't really have anything else. I like your point about it being like a serious story that just happens to have Ernest as its hero, and therefore it becomes this slapstick, over the top comedy. I really loved the special effects. I loved all the practical effects. I'm basically just saying what you guys said over again. There are also just like moments that I don't think you could appreciate unless you have seen other Ernest films and like him. So that some might say is in the bad, but for me, that's in the good. Like when he goes into all his characters and stuff, or when we have the guys who are selling him the thousands of dollars of troll merchandise, because I've seen them in the other films. And then I also love just some of the non sequitur humor, like when he's like, I don't know when to quit. And then it flashes to the teacher and he's writing on the chalkboard and she's just looking at the camera. He doesn't know when to quit. And then just,
that sound.
Oh man. And then she smacked him. I mean, we rewound that like 4 times and just kept laughing and laughing and laughing. Because I'd totally it's such a throwaway thing that I completely forgot it. Like, yeah, there's lots that I remembered in this movie, the big moments, right? But those little bits of humor that you're like, that only works when you go for it. And it doesn't always work, but he went for it and it worked. So, again, he didn't tone down his character just because he was on Disney right now. He kept Ernest as Ernest. Mm-hmm. To a fault, and I loved that.
One other thing I got to throw in is just the dialogue in general, his one-liners. I mean, that goes through all of the Ernest movies. That's something that makes it infinitely rewatchable, because he says things so quick, and they're all so funny. I was looking through quotes, trying to find something for the intro. And like I miss so much like when he's talking, because he just like puts out hilarious thing after hilarious thing so fast. That just absolutely has to be recognized. He says so many great things. The bad, Lance, what's bad about this movie?
I mean, there's not a lot of bad. And bad can be arbitrary in this situation because, okay, bad. The children actors aren't the greatest, but that's kind of arbitrary because they are children actors. And one, they weren't professional children actors. They were really only used for the Ernest movies. So they probably didn't get a whole lot of like actual like professional training. A lot of it was probably done on the fly. And then probably the other thing, John Terry, he started with like local, I think it was mattress commercials is how this all originated with Ernest P. Worrell. And I think that kind of shows a little bit. Like, I feel like he probably did like 1 or 2 takes for some of these shots and was like, that's good enough. Let's move on. Instead of trying to like get like the shot, he got one that was like, it's good enough. We can use that. And then that was that. But I mean, realistically, you know, I can't say a whole lot of bad about the movie because you kind of get what you get with these type of movies, you know, and what we got realistically was probably a lot better than it should have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, what are you thinking for bad?
I'll agree with what Lance said so far. What I'll add is the story could have been stitched together better. I really like the idea of the story, but there's lots of pieces that Phil glossed over or they didn't tie it together because it was a kid's movie, because it was a low budget movie. Again, it feels almost like the directing, like, we could rewrite this scene and make this make more sense and have more resonance and be cooler with the backstory. But that's going to take X amount of days and dollars. And is it going to make it that much better? I don't know. So, why is she not wanting, if she wants to have her sisters and siblings resurrected from the 1700s, why is she preventing him from summoning the troll? She should be finding a way to get him to summon it and then be able to stop it. She should have weapons for him. I mean, lots of little logic things that I think you really could have smoothed over and or tweaked to make the story even cooler and resonate even more. But again, I kind of like Lance, I feel like I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, that stuff, I haven't even thought about that. I've watched the movie tons of times. I was all about it when I was a kid. It never, ever dawned on me that the time difference sort of, I've always scratched my head on, like how long ago, like they put the troll under the tree, how many generations have passed versus how old she is now. But I've always thought that the movie was paced really well, and maybe that's at the expense of backstory and logic and things like that. But so I don't have a whole lot of bads for this, but they might kind of fall under similar lines, like Ernest going out to what is the old lady's name now? I can't remember. All I'm thinking is Yzma
Hargrave, Barcastle. It's Hackmore, old lady Hackmore.
Hackmore. When he's supposed to go out to the Hackmore estate, the sheriff tells him, basically, like, you have to go do this or you're going to be fired. Like that's more or less the setup. I'm like, do sheriffs have the ability to fire people in the sanitation department?
Well, whether they do or don't, that plot point should somehow tie in to the greater story, as opposed to just him meeting her. Because maybe cleaning something up out there is what opened up something that did something. Like just little things like that, I think could have really tied the pieces together.
Well, and we also have when the little girl gets turned into a statue, Elizabeth, I think her name is, they have it take place on her bed, which is very scary, her rolling over and this two-nosed monster is there. But the whole thing is her mom saying, hey, there's nothing under the bed. You need to quit thinking about this. And she checks under the bed and goes up. There's no setup for her thinking that there is anything under her bed. We just have to kind of accept it because she's a kid, even though there's already weird things going on. Like it seems like it could have been set up that she sees something under the bed or thinks that there's something under the bed, calls her mom in. But again, that's cutting out that backstory to just get the story beat in and move it along.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like the children are going missing and the town's just kind of going on as is. The sheriff's not really investigating. All the other parents are like, they're probably at the party, but they've been gone for at least a day.
Yeah, 24 hours.
Yeah, so there's lots of little things like that just logically everything just starts falling apart. And again, you could have shored it up, but does this movie need it? No, it doesn't. So,
Well, and what do you think? I noticed this on this watch through that generally the hero of the story finds the way to defeat the bad guy. So this should be Ernest, but isn't it the kids that figure out, oh, it's Milk? And,
right,
and they,
but milk isn't the final thing. It's unconditional love.
and
And
the heart of a child.
Ernest kind of figures that out with Hackmore's help.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. He ultimately comes up with, he figures out what he needs to do. So
yeah, were Milk the actual final third act weapon, it would be a problem to have the kids figured out and not him. Although in a comedy, a lot of those rules really don't apply. I mean, those rules aren't really rules at all. They're just kind of what works.
Yeah.
So right. So and if he would have figured out Milk, we wouldn't have had miak. And the world needs miak.
But I think in that case though, like that type of scenario, like it is like you could look at it from a different angle. Like it is a kid's movie, so it does kind of make a little bit of sense that the kids did figure out how to defeat the mom with essentially what is a kid's drink. I mean, generally milk is associated with small children to drink it to get big and strong. So it's almost kind of like empowering small children and also getting them to drink their milk at the same time.
I buy that. That totally makes sense to me. The last two bads that I have, they're not really bads about the movie. They're just like things that I lament. And one is that we don't really get Rimshot, his trusty dog. He's in one other movie. Is it Ernest Goes to Jail? Yeah. Like it like I love that dog, man. That dog needed to just be in all of them. And I'm sure that they're like contractual things, but
it was Disney's dog.
Yeah, they should have figured out a way to make it happen.
Because
it also makes it really sad, like a sad story in the Ernest verse. That he had this dog for a couple of years, and then the dog went away. What happened to Rimshot? It leaves too many sad questions open.
Well, and what's really interesting about Rimshot is like in the previous movies, like he was kind of like just a dog. Like he was just there as, being a regular dog. And then in this movie, they were like, he was kind of like the sidekick companion, oh, I have a car. Thanks for saving the day. Don't know how you reached it. That's all right. It's Ernest.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ernest is basically a cartoon character. Exactly. I mean, there's so many points where he should die. Like the trash compactor, right? He should be dead, but we're not playing by those rules. The last bad that I have is just sadly that Jim Varney passed away, and that we don't get so like we're getting like a Hocus Pocus, or I think it's already out, the Hocus Pocus 2 or whatever. Like we're never going to get any sort of Ernest revival or Jim Varney renaissance. And that, just thinking of that, like watching these movies, it's sort of the same thing when I watch a Robin Williams movie, of thinking that like, just we don't get any more. This is it. And which might be good in some regards. Not that they've passed away, but we have like these really great artifacts to always revisit. So
this is a great one. Should we get into Schlock?
Let's do it. Let's schlock it up, brother.
Oh man. So you get Schlock points with me anytime you have a dog driving a vehicle. Especially when he tells him to throw it in reverse and runs the troll over. Oh man, that's good stuff. Good stuff.
How about a bumper sandwich, Booger Lips? Favorite line.
Great line. That's the kind of line when you're a kid that like just leaves you rolling on the floor, and like you like try and figure out how to use it on your friends like the next day.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
I paused it after that line and I'm like, this would have made my like 10-year-old self, like my head explode. I'm sure it did. I just don't remember.
It's so alliterative.
Yep.
And someone with a runny nose is gonna die. Yeah, I mean, they're just all over the place.
Those are very Ashy kind of quotes.
Right. Yeah, let's get into that. Ash,
Yeah.
well, you got a comparison?
You brought up Ash, buddy. I want to hear it.
So, when you look at some of the reviews for this film, a lot of people, obviously the ratings are very low. Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, the movie doesn't get enough credit. And a lot of people go back to Ernest, he's too over the top. It's slapstick stupid. He's a cartoon character. And, I look at that, and then I'm like, well, in Evil Dead 2, and especially in Army of Darkness, Bruce Campbell is a walking embodiment of a cartoon character in and of itself, especially in Army of Darkness. And as grown-ups, people love those movies. Like, people love Army of Darkness, but it's like, that's kind of the same thing Ernest is doing. It's the same character. It really is. But he's fighting a troll instead of fighting with himself, So I feel like he doesn't get the fair shake that he should with the character that he was playing, because I guarantee you some of those same people that complained about Ernest and Scared Stupid are the same people that probably love Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams in Army of Darkness. And that's okay. I love Army of Darkness. I'm not taking anything away from that movie, but like, you can't be okay with it in one movie and the exact same scenario be not okay with it in a different movie. And I think it works better in Ernest Scared Stupid because it is, in fact, a kid's movie. So why wouldn't he be a freaking cartoon?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that physical comedy. Bruce Campbell, he is often lauded for his physical comedy, smashing himself with the plates over the head. But even in the intro credits of Ernest Scared Stupid, we see him like choking himself with a rubber claw, right? I mean, the dude has this physical comedy in him. He's got I see a lot of Jim Carrey in his performance, like the mask and being able to manipulate his face around. Like, talk about rubber face, man, being able to like make all sorts of expressions. I mean, yeah, and people love Ash Williams and the Mask, or Ace Ventura and all that, and they're completely silly and over the top. So why not this janitor from Missouri or wherever it takes place?
Well, I think part of it is the setup with slapstick. It's probably one of the most divisive forms of comedy, besides like a really, really dark comedy. I mean, some people love it, some people hate it. Like, I grew up watching Jerry Lewis films, loved all his slapstick comedy. I mean, and there's so much of it, even in the silent films and the early films from the 30s and 40s, like the Three Stooges. I mean, there's a huge track record of slapstick throughout the ages. But it feels like now, like with the Mask, for example, he puts the mask on and then he becomes super, super slapsticky, right? So like the story itself justifies his crazy actions so that it feels safe for the audience to say, yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, slapstick's for kids, but I can enjoy it here. And whereas something like Ernest, they don't put any pretenses up. They're just saying, no, this is slapstick and you either take it or leave it. They don't guide you into it. So I think some of those films, like with Evil Dead and some of the Jim Carrey ones, there are ways that they let the audience know that it's okay that it's slapstick here and that they're not less sophisticated for laughing and enjoying it. Whereas I think something like this is just pure silliness, and some people can't get on board because of social remorse, which is sad.
Well, do you think it's because it has? I'm not thinking of the other Ernest movies because I think there's an argument for those. But do you think that it's because there's a lack of a straight man in this that character type, the foil to the slapstick, the opposite person. Because in Evil Dead, or I'm sorry, in Army of Darkness, we have basically everybody, but mostly King Arthur and Merlin, right? They're very serious, and juxtaposed to Ash's kind of wackiness. And then, like, the Mask, we have him with the mask and without the mask, and the villain. And
yeah, I think a straight man is a device that helps people get on board with the crazy slapstick things. So yeah, I don't think that's the only reason.
Well, it just shows that, like, this isn't normal, right? That Ernest is weird and the rest of the world is normal.
Yeah, but the whole town kind of thinks he's weird until the end. So I mean, the whole town's kind of a straight man, except for the kids. The kids believe him.
I think though, like, even if the town is like the straight man, like, it's not necessarily the direct yin to his yang. You know, I think what Darby's saying is generally in those movies, like, you have a polar opposite to try and, you know, bounce each other off of. Whereas with, I guess, Ernest Scared Stupid, like, even like the sheriff, like, even though he's supposed to be, you know, the serious kind of guy, he still comes off as, like, you know, a goofy local yokel. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to take him serious, even though he's supposed to be, you know, the law.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I think grounding a movie that has a lot of slapstick in reality makes it more palatable for audiences, and this movie doesn't do that. And I don't think it has to, but yeah, I think you're both right that is one of the reasons that it might not play as well for the people with more sophisticated taste and humor.
So I want to compare this to another movie. I again never noticed this until this watch along. The trope, the idea of kids hanging out with adults, grown men, for no reason. Right, the Back to the Future phenomenon, where it's this teenager, and for some reason he just goes and hangs out with the old wacky scientist. I know that there's fan theories as to why all that has happened, but why are the kids so enamored with Ernest? Because he's goofy and funny, but isn't it also kind of weird?
It's kind of weird, but he's a big kid himself.
Heart of a child.
Heart of a child. So yeah.
For that exact reason, like, he's you know, I don't know, maybe he's kind of like Forrest Gump. You know, he's not all there in the head, you know, but he's intelligent enough to know right from wrong. He's responsible enough to at least respect the boundaries of, you know, what is right and wrong. But he's also goofy enough that he can still hang out with the kids because he's kind of like on their level mentally, or maybe maturity wise would be a better word.
Well, and the adults don't want them hanging out with Ernest. At the beginning of the movie, they say, you're not supposed to be here. Say that again?
Well, I'm saying probably because from a maturity level, they think he's an idiot.
Well, and that's another thing. The descendants of Phineas P. Whirl are supposed to get dumber and dumber and dumber. But Ernest isn't dumb, man. Like, he might be misguided or might be bumbling, but I mean, the first thing we get of him, he's got this huge contraption created. Like, you can't be stupid and make a Goldberg machine.
Yeah, he's more like an absent-minded professor than an idiot. Yeah,
and sure. I think that's something that's always kind of been appealing to me about him, is that, he's a janitor. Like, that's his main profession, I think, throughout the movies, is that he's supposed to be this blue collar guy who's, I mean, cleaning up after people for a living, right? It's not supposed to be glamorous, but he is always like thinking above his station in some way, right? Like he views his place in life as an opportunity to create and to be inventive and to, I don't know, do these grandiose things. And I always love that about the character.
He's a dreamer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, so what movie were you going to compare this to?
Just Back to the Future.
Okay.
And I just watched a movie the other night called Munchie, and the kids, like, they hang out with this old German professor across the street who might be a Nazi. I don't know. I shouldn't have said that. I don't know if I can say stuff like that on YouTube. Strike that, YouTube. I take it back.
It's funny though, because for the time, if you think about it, you bring up Munchie, you bring it Back to the Future. You can even look at like Karate Kid, Sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Always have like this teenager kind of hanging out with this, older guy, and just for whatever reason, it's kind of frowned upon by some of the people, but it's okayed by everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the Future is a perfect example. Like, his parents seem to be okay with him hanging out with Doc Brown, but the principal knows better, and he's going to make you a slacker. And it's same thing with like Karate Kid. Like, his mom's okay, yeah, go hang out with Mr. Miyagi. I don't know what he's doing with you. I don't understand Japanese karate, but go hang out with him anyways.
I think maybe like my concern. I think maybe my concern of a younger person hanging out with an older person, that might be more of a modern thing, whereas back in the day it was seen more as mentorship,
right?
Or like now we live in a world where we get to see every awful thing happen, and like, those kids shouldn't have been hanging out with that old guy because now there's pictures. But back then, yeah, I mean, how did you learn things as a kid, right? You had people older than you tell you.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the whole mentor student trope, which, I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker. I mean, it's everywhere. It's the teacher and the students. And I think in modern society, everything's been like, well, you only have one teacher and they're at this one place and they only teach you this one thing. Whereas throughout history, you learn stuff where you could learn it. And if you showed an interest in something someone else knew about, and they were older and knew more about it, and then they would teach you because you showed an interest in something they liked, I think it's a very natural way for society to continue on, is to have that mentorship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think in modern days, it's scarier because there's more knowledge of what can happen, but I think it is a normal part of human nature to have that student-teacher relationship of like learning something. The guy down the street who has the hot rod car, who's like, you're like, oh man, that's cool, and he's going to show you how to change out some part or something, right? It's like, hey kid, come check this out.
Yeah, like school teaches you about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but your mentor teaches you about life, right? I never let my schooling get in the way of my learning.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, how many, like, who taught you guitar? Like, you find a guitar teacher who was probably in a band somewhere, who was
an older guy.
Right. That's
my parents paid him.
I'm not hanging out with this guy unless you pay me.
So I want to get into some more things here. The kids that are brought back at the end of the movie. So said earlier, like the time gap is sort of weird. How long ago was that? Just a long time ago, I think, is what the movie says.
That's what they say. Yeah, a long time ago.
But I think it's kind of interesting, and this is the not having any background given. But these kids, they got turned into dolls, let's say 100 years ago, right? This woman could be 100 years old, by some sort of magical voodoo vogue means. Say 100 years, and now they came back as children in the 1990s. That just seems like big consequences after the movie, that like, oh, we don't have to We don't have to address this. Movie's over.
Sounds like a sequel is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. See, a sequel we sadly won't get.
Yeah.
But
no, again, it's that weird thing of like lots of cool ideas story-wise, and they just kind of go in different directions, and they don't shore anything up or tie anything together, and there's these loose ends, and you're like, huh, yeah, that's a problem. But, you know, they're reunited, and she's 100 and something, so can she take care of 5, you know, tweens?
Well, you know, it's funny because I know Darby's brought this up a couple of times with this whole time difference thing, and I don't know if it was just me when I was a kid, or maybe it was just the way Eartha Kitt's character came across, but I always kind of looked at her like as like some sort of like witch to begin with, and based on that information, like witches usually live, you know, 100, 200 years, like, you know, they're usually hundreds of years old to begin with. So,
fact,
I never looked at it as like, you know, as this weird time thing. I just kind of looked at it like, well, she was probably around when they got turned to wood to begin with, you know, like, and she just knows because she was there when it happened. That's the type of character that she kind of portrayed to me. Had this witchy feel, and I'm just like, she's probably just a witch. I mean,
not a witch, I'm your wife.
Yeah. Again, solid explanation. She's just a witch. This movie has it all: witches and trolls. And
I mean, if trolls exist in this film, then why not witches? Yeah,
absolutely.
Plus, she has those cool books that have like the really big writing.
Man, I need a few of those.
So schlocky, loved it.
So witches actually exist. Apparently, within the world of the movie, trolls do actually exist, and more people know about them because when Ernest goes to the two guys, I think one of them's a different actor. I was going to bring that up. I don't think it's Chuck and Bobby that's in the other movies. It's Tim and Bobby, which I never realized until we got into this movie for the show. But Tim Tulip, he has actual troll repellent. I always thought that he was ripping off Ernest, right? That he was like getting bug spray and putting a troll repellent sticker on it. But no, like the stuff that he has is like actual like troll repellent, right? Or at least it never shows him putting the sticker on it. It looks like a legit product.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So apparently this is a real problem.
Yeah, and yet no one believed him until they took the kids in the party. Has anyone noticed, segue, the parallels to this in Hocus Pocus?
Why don't you tell us?
It just feels very, very similar. Like the whole idea of some old curse coming back to affect kids like hundreds of years later, and the whole town doesn't believe them. And then there's the kids slowly getting taken away, and there's the big dance party at the school, and then it's the fight to get the kids back. There's lots of parallels, and when they came out within 3 or 4 years of each other, I noticed that a lot this time. That I got a very Hocus Pocus vibe from this movie, although this movie came out like a couple years before.
Well, I think what that is that one, they're both done by Disney, and we know how much Disney likes to regurgitate the same over again. But two, I think to further your point from earlier, that Hocus Pocus is the same story with all of those weird holes filled in to make it a more complete storyline. So they saw this and was like, there's potential here. If we just change a couple things around a little bit, and we can change the character from male to female and make it witches instead of trolls, boom, got ourselves a moneymaker. And everybody fell in love with that movie, except for me, because I knew better, and I don't.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I do like Hocus Pocus, but I have room in my heart for both.
Well, that's why you're on the bottom of the screen. Because I am also
Hocus haters.
I am also not a Hocus Pocus fan. I can appreciate it for what it is, But if I gotta pick one and leave the other, it's Ernest Scared Stupid, hands down. Lance brought up earlier that it doesn't have very good reviews, and kind of looking around, one of the criticisms I've seen of it is that it is so similar to Hocus Pocus. But the thing is, it came out 2 years earlier. Like, Hocus Pocus is similar to Ernest Scared Stupid.
Right.
Stupid. So you said this is one of your favorite Halloween films.
For me, yeah. I don't watch a whole lot of horror to begin with. So
Man.
yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites.
This is a classic. Like, I think that this movie, I mean, it should be a yearly watch. It's going to be a yearly watch in my household.
I think it's achieved cult status.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a huge fan base out there, and it should be bigger. But yeah.
Well, let's get to. I want to talk about something slightly controversial. The main weapon in the movie, milk. What's the rhyme? A mother's care, right? And that's how they figure out that it's milk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this milk comes from cows. Like, isn't it kind of weird that like a cow milk defeats the troll? Like, shouldn't it maybe be breast milk? Could they have taken this movie in a very weird direction?
Is this where you
What's that?
This is where you
We're gonna pause for technical difficulties.
This is the sequel that I want, where they just hire a bunch of wet nurses to take out the trolls.
Oh, I mean,
and like I said earlier, kids movie, milk is usually associated as a kid's drink. Kids save the day. Trying to keep it PG.
I don't know. It just seems weird that it's like milk of another animal, as opposed to just the poem. The rhyme makes it seem.
Whoa! Cows are moms too, bro.
It is true.
And
cows are moms too, and it says a mother. So why not? So any living creature,
just any mother.
Yeah, goat milk would have been fine. Oat milk would have not been fine.
Yeah, that's what you're not exploring, Darby. Is that could it have been the milk of any type of mother, like a goat, a cow,
right?
Rat.
I mean,
Greg.
Birds are mothers. Reptiles are mothers.
They don't produce milk.
Could they have thrown eggs?
No, that's not milk.
Right, but like there are caveats to the mother's care line.
Yeah, maybe. Well, no, but here's the thing: mother's care. It wasn't the milk. Milk was just one thing. The mother's care was the unconditional love.
So that being so a reptile person could have defeated the troll.
Correct.
As long as it showed
could have
love.
defeated him. A reptile person could have defeated him. Eggs probably would have worked. So any form of whatever from a mother would stop the troll a little bit, but it was the unconditional love that was the true weapon.
Okay.
Just like in real life.
And I think that's a good place to end the show. I don't want to roll the credits just yet, but I want to get everyone's wind up on it. But that truly is the moral of the story, right?
Right.
Like that's what it's all about. Hug a troll. Come on. Lance, what are your closing thoughts on Ernest Scared Stupid?
I mean, kind of like I said at the beginning, it's wholeheartedly underrated. I think it's got a halfway, it's got a good message at the end, make love, not war. And, Jim Varney was just a childhood treasure of mine. as I grew older, I just learned to appreciate him for his other works and how underrated he was. And gone too soon, by far.
Yeah,
absolutely. Chris, do you have any other bows to put on that beautiful sentiment?
I have a thought, and I'm not sure. Is this the first Ernest movie someone should see? I don't think it is, because I think it's got the horror element and Ernest, and I think you should be prepared with what Ernest gives you, so you're not taken aback by that, and you can appreciate the horror movie that's in there too. So I would suggest Camp, Christmas, or Goes to Jail. Watch one of those first, just to get initiated into Ernest P. Worrell's world, and then next Halloween, next October, or whenever you're feeling spooky, check this out.
Yeah, I definitely think you should start with an Ernest movie where it doesn't have like supernatural elements in it. So Christmas, right? Santa Claus is in that. Even let's see. Ernest plays basketball.
Slam dunk. Ernest slam dunk.
Yeah, he's got magical shoes. And even in Ernest Goes to Jail, he gets like the magical like electricity powers, right? Because he gets electric. But I think you should start with one where like he doesn't have any extra boons of any kind, and like magic doesn't exist. So you get pure unfiltered Ernest. Yep,
and then you know what you're getting, and then you can visit the others.
So that is all the time that we have for today. I think we could just keep going and going with this movie for a long time. Maybe we'll revisit it next year. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a watch along or something. Anyway, let's see. What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to tell you what kind of movie we're doing next. We're continuing with Schlocktober. We are doing Pumpkinhead Part 2, Blood Wings. I've never seen this. I'm excited to check it out and continue that. I know a lot of people love Pumpkinhead. Lance, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, make sure you check out his YouTube channel and podcast. I'm Darby Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. This is Lance, the Obscure Movie Guy. We've been compelled by Schlock. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Schlock. Schlocky, schlock.